Hi, my name is Christina Hildebrand. I am the founder and president of A Voice for Choice Advocacy. We advocate and educate for informed choice and transparency of what goes into your body, be it food, air, water, pharmaceuticals, whatever it is. So back in, I think it was July, I did a video that said come December we would have vaccine mandates. So we're not quite there yet, but we did get one of the vaccines, the COVID vaccine by Pfizer, approved yesterday by the FDA for emergency use authorization. And I do still think we're headed towards mandates, not necessarily federal or state mandates, but societal mandates definitely. So what I mean by that is things like going on airplanes, getting into stores, getting your driver's license, getting your benefits, those types of things. I do think we're still headed in that direction. I wanted to start and just go over today some issues with the vaccine so that if you want to share this with anyone, it's a brief synopsis of the issue with emergency use vaccines and specifically with these COVID vaccines. So I'm going to start off with emergency use authorization. What does that mean? Basically means that this is a prophylactic vaccine that is better than anything else out there on the market. What it doesn't mean is that it is fully FDA approved or that clinical trials have been done on this. So we are in phase 3 clinical trials for all the vaccines that are coming up for emergency use authorization. That means that they are still studying the vaccine and they only have about 2 months of data based on the people that are in the clinical trials. So if you get the vaccine, you are basically still in a clinical trial. It's a live human experiment going on, to the point that if you get the vaccine, they will monitor you and they will follow you for a full year. So you'll be asked to opt into a program called VSafe. You will be sent for the first week a daily survey on how you're feeling, and then it becomes weekly, and then it becomes monthly. So it's truly like a clinical trial. So one thing to know about the emergency use authorization and the approval process is that these vaccines have come to the approval process through showing 90% or a high percentage of efficacy. They have to show over 50% efficacy. And what that actually means is that about somewhere between 150 and 200 people got COVID in the clinical trials, and that the majority of them got it in the placebo group, and the minority of them got it in the control group. So what we see in the Pfizer vaccine is that 190 people got COVID. 20 of them were in the vaccine group, and 170 of them were in the placebo group. And so they look at that and they say, okay, there's a 90% efficacy rate. But realistically, well, you have to look at the larger picture, which is the fact that there were 20,000 people in each of those groups in the clinical trial. And so the vast majority of people have not gotten COVID. And so to say that it has a 90% efficacy really isn't very accurate, because we haven't seen it long term. We can only really get a full efficacy rate once the vaccine has been around for a year. That's why they do 2-year-long clinical trials on this. I have not been able to find one vaccine that's been rushed that hasn't resulted in severe side effects. We look at the 1976 flu vaccine, the H1N1 flu vaccine, that 40 million people out of 200 million people in the US were vaccinated, and there were serious side effects of Guillain-Barré syndrome for a large proportion, and it was pulled off the market. Same thing in 2009, the H1N1 vaccine ended with it being pulled from the market because of severe narcolepsy issues. And so, we're rushing this thing to the market, and there isn't full safety data. And so to take the vaccine, you have to understand that you are taking a serious safety risk. The other thing to think about with these vaccines is there is no liability because they're being produced under the PrEP Act. The manufacturers, the people injecting them into you, have no liability if you have any side effects. So there's no way you can go and sue the vaccine manufacturer. There will be a compensation program. It will not be the vaccine injury compensation program because that's for children. There's a PrEP Act compensation program, but we really have no idea what money is going to be available or what's going to be available if you get injured from the vaccine. The other thing to think about is that these are all using novel technologies, at least the 3 front runners are. So the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine use mRNA messenger RNA technology, and then the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine uses adenovirus vectors. And all three of those have never been used in humans, never been approved by the FDA in humans. So realistically, we have no idea what the long-term effects of any of those three technologies are on the autoimmune system, on things like fertility, cancer causing, whether the DNA does anything, whether the RNA in the vaccines does anything to your DNA. None of those things are known. And so when you take these vaccines at this point, you're taking that risk. You don't have any idea of the long-term effects of this on your body. One other thing with the vaccine is that they've only been tested in healthy people or relatively healthy people. And so there are a large set of screening criteria that if, for example, you have obesity, if you have diabetes, if you're on certain medications, you are not in the trial. So if you have those things naturally, we don't know whether you will have a reaction to this vaccine. We saw in the UK there were 2 nurses that had anaphylactic shock, and they have allergies normally. So we really don't know what, when you get into people who are not completely healthy, how they are going to react to this vaccine. We also have an issue of, which seems to not be the case with these vaccines, but we're really not sure, of disease enhancement. And that is, so it used to be that any coronavirus vaccine that was developed previously, when they tested it in animals, and the animals were then exposed to coronavirus, the animals had terrible reactions and died. And so we don't know that that's not going to happen. It hasn't happened in the clinical trials thus far, but not very many people have been exposed to COVID again. So it's really not clear what's going to happen. The other thing that this has never been tested in pregnant or breastfeeding women, and so they are being offered the vaccine when it comes to their, for example, if you're a healthcare worker, if it comes to your priority, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you're said you can take it. The issue with that is these RNA vaccines, they're based on the premise of replication. And so the question is, someone who brought this up in the FDA Emergency Use Authorization hearing yesterday, is that when you are pregnant, your cells are replicating, the fetus's cells are replicating all the time. And so if you have this vaccine in you, what is going to happen? Will it be replicated in the baby? Will it, who knows? So that's just another issue. No pregnant people are in the clinical trials. At the beginning, I think there were 23 in the Pfizer that got pregnant after they got the vaccine. The other piece is that there were no people over 85 or no people in long-term care facilities included in the clinical trials. So we don't know how it will affect those people. There were very few people of color in the study. So Native Americans, African American, blacks, Latinos, there's a much lower proportion than in the population. And so we really don't know how this vaccine affects so many people. The vaccine is known to have severe reactions in the first 2 days. You are going to feel like you have the hangover, you are going to feel like you have the flu. Those first 2 days, your body is really going to react to the vaccine. And they basically said, we need to make sure that people can take 2 days off of work after each dose, and then the reaction after the second dose is actually worse than the first dose. But we need to make sure that we can have people take 2 days off. One of the meetings I was watching was joking, but realistically joking, that, we wouldn't want to get all the nurses vaccinated on one day because we would have no nursing staff in the hospital for the next 2 days. Same thing, we wouldn't want our cardiology team to be vaccinated because we would have no cardiologists in the hospital. So this is serious. They're taking it seriously. And my question is, we don't know what that reaction, when you have such a strong reaction to a vaccine, what else is it doing in your body? Is it triggering other cells, other immune disorders, those types of things? One other thing with the vaccine is that it hasn't been shown to prevent transmission. So the real question is if you get the vaccine, are you really doing anything for society? You're doing something for yourself. You're reducing the risk of severe COVID, but you're not actually doing much to prevent spread of the vaccine, which is why they're saying, even after the vaccine comes, we're still going to have to wear masks, we're still going to have to social distance, because you can have it inside you, be asymptomatic, and transmit it on, which, in a sense, if you were going to get COVID, you would stay home if you had the symptoms. And so we don't know what the transmission rate is if you've gotten the vaccine and been exposed to COVID, and whether you can actually pass it on. The other issue, which we heard about a lot yesterday, and it's an ethical issue, is regarding people in the placebo group. So if you're in a placebo group of the clinical trials, you will be allowed to come out of the clinical trial when your priority group comes up. So for example, if you're in the placebo group in the clinical trial and you're a healthcare worker, you can go get the vaccine and be taken out of the clinical trial. You're actually going to be called a crossover, in which case you will go into the control group, which means that the placebo group is getting eroded. So realistically, we're not even going to have a year-long placebo group versus control group in this, because we're losing that placebo group as they get vaccinated. And so there really isn't, the testing is not going to be as strict as it would be in a normal vaccine trial or any other drug trial. So, I look at it and I really ask people to do their research, to look at the safety profile of these vaccines. And one thing I'm really concerned about is the informed consent that people getting these vaccines will have. The issue is it should be the same as if you're in the clinical trial. So when you go into clinical trials, one of the huge things is informed consent and understanding the ramifications of if you get the vaccine, that there are no safety and efficacy data, and so you are a guinea pig. The same thing should be true when you are getting this vaccine under emergency use authorization. And so we still have to see what the paperwork is that comes with it. There will be a doctor version, there will be a patient version, and we have to wait and see for that. But my feeling is most likely it will not give full informed consent. And I really hope that whoever takes the vaccine truly does inform themselves of the potential side effects, the potential risks that they are taking by taking it. In summary, my takeaway is COVID vaccines are coming. They are under emergency use authorization, which means that they are human experiments, live human experiments. You can think of them as phase 4. If you get the vaccine, you will be followed just as if you were in a clinical trial. My recommendation is to wait on the vaccine to understand the safety, the full safety and efficacy of it. There is no safety and efficacy, full safety and efficacy data. There is no liability of the manufacturer, so you can't sue them if you get injured by it. You can go to a compensation program, but we have no idea how that compensation program is going to work. And that these are 3 novel technologies. These have never been used on human before. And we have no idea what their long-term safety profiles are, whether they cause autoimmune disorders, whether they cause cancer, whether they cause infertility. We have no idea what they're going to be like. We have a history where we've rushed vaccines, and each time there have been serious side effects from them and they've been pulled from market. So what can you do? What do we need to do? We need to talk to people. We need to make sure that if they're taking the vaccine, that they're making an informed choice, that they understand what the consequences are, potential consequences are, of them taking the vaccine and of them not taking the vaccine. We need to talk to people. I mean, COVID absolutely has been a silver lining in that people understand that there could be issues with the vaccine and that they need to look at it and make that decision. And we just need to keep educating people so that they understand that. We also need to reach out to our legislators, to our board of supervisors, to our public health officers, and have them ensure that they are truly making an effort to give informed consent when they are giving these vaccines, because they are like being in a clinical trial. At Voice for Choice Advocacy, we have an outreach program, and we are going to be sending out ways that you can send emails to your senators, to your assembly members, to your local public health officers, to your board of supervisors on this issue. We have to wake people up. We have to have them understand that if you're taking this vaccine, that it is truly an experiment, and that they feel that they have made a complete informed decision on, yes, I'm going to get this vaccine. The question I ask somebody is, would you have stepped up for the clinical trials for any of these vaccines? If the answer is yes, then you may be a good candidate to get the vaccine. If the answer is no, why on earth would you get it now? Because you're in a clinical trial, or the same thing as a clinical trial. Anyway, that's all I've got for today, and I appreciate you listening, and A Voice for Choice Advocacy will reach out to you and share sort of next steps. If you are not on our mailing list, please go to our website, A Voice for Choice Advocacy, and there's a pop-up that says that you want to be signed up for our newsletter. We don't send a lot of emails out, we just send important things out and action items. So I appreciate your time, and have a great day.